Okay, we are ready to proceed. The next presentation is by the Committee for Future Generations as outlined in CMD 13H 13.24, 14.22, and 15.21. And I understand that Ms. Mihailich, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, will make the presentation. Please proceed.
My name is Debbie Mihalitz. I'm here representing the Committee for Future Generations. Our committee is a cross-sector of the population of northern Saskatchewan in terms of culture, heritage, knowledge, skills. We're also a cross-sector in terms of approaches to sustainable job creation, to sustainable economic development. So I would like to address the prior intervener. We are never stuck. We always have a choice. And if we get a chance to express ourselves, we get to share that knowledge and develop a truly sustainable economic future for our people. We've heard a lot in the past couple of days about how important jobs are. We've heard statistics in terms of environment, in terms of effluents, contaminants. What our committee is here to represent today is to address the elephant in the room, which is the ongoing continued abuse of human rights, which is the only way that this industry is advancing its agenda. When I say abuse of human rights, I'm talking about withholding of information and suppressing the voice. If you're familiar with the term lateral violence, industry has become a vehicle for the lateral violence in our communities. What we've learned on our journey is you can't have environmental abuse without human rights abuses happening, paving the way. I'll quote directly from the Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights and Freedoms, Article 29.2. States shall take effective measures to ensure that no storage or disposal of hazardous materials shall take place in the lands or territories of Indigenous peoples. These last 5 words are what we are demanding. Without their free, prior, and informed consent. If this is so safe, why is there such a concerted effort to be suppressing the voice of the people in the communities? What I'm referring to when I say suppressing the voice and withholding information, there have been 2 supposed collaboration agreements signed. Pine House and English River. Personally, I live an hour away from each of those communities. Our committee is made up of members of those communities. They have firsthand, unfortunately, they have firsthand experience of what it means to have the spirit of your community ripped to shreds. Proponents were in and engaging with, not with the community. I would ask Cameco to never use the word community or the CNSC when you're talking about who you're engaging with. These collaboration agreements happened behind closed doors. They started years before the signing. Industry engaged with the administrations of those communities without the knowledge of the people in the communities. For example, the collaboration agreement in Pine House was signed on December 12, 2012. The first community meeting at which the public was informed of that agreement was on November 13th, less than a month prior. And at that time they were told the signing would be December 31st. When the members of the community, certain members, attempted to express concern, to ask questions, those attempts were quite frankly, quite cruelly put down in public. When they saw they could get nowhere that way, an attempt at an injunction was made just to buy some time, to have some time to understand what was going on. The signing got moved up to December 12th. In English River, the signing happened on May 31st, 2013. The first public meeting held to inform the members of English River was May 22nd and 23rd. A member of English River First Nations wrote directly to Cameco CEO Tim Gitzel. I have a copy of that letter if you would like it. She explained to him very clearly, if you go ahead and sign this agreement, it is without the knowledge of the people in this community. We have not been consulted. We need time. That letter was replied to by Mr. Gitzel. We know he read it because he replied directly to the vice chief, totally circumventing the writer of the letter. And the signing went ahead. Again, I repeat, if this is such a safe operation, why is there such an attempt to exclude community members? That's all they were asking for, was their right to free, prior, and informed consent. Why the rush? Through those collaboration agreements, Cameco can sit back now and watch the people police themselves. Because what's at stake now? Jobs. Promises of money that are mostly going to contractors. Also, we find it no coincidence that these collaboration agreements were signed with communities, with administrations, with administrations who are also in site selection process with a nuclear waste management organization. It's in Cameco's best interest, isn't it, to get a repository in the ground. The nuclear industry is in a pretty sorry state globally right now. There is no such thing as a deep geological repository yet operating in the world, and if they don't get that, they might not be able to continue producing that most lethal substance. They want it out of sight, out of mind, or even better, reprocess it into plutonium. So with the collaboration agreements, there's the jobs in the mines. Now the people, of course, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization is being painted with the same brush now in terms of the average person in the community. I better not speak out against nuclear waste coming here because I might lose my job in the mine. And I have videos here of members of our community, of our committee speaking to this now. Could I have my
support of the northern uranium development that Cameco has set forward? It is the nuclear fuel cycle. The nuclear fuel cycle means that there will be storage or reprocessing of nuclear waste. What we've noticed here in the community is that NUMO has come into the community 3 years ago and done a profile on all of us, asking us about health issues, economic growth, and so on. The package that was put together, we feel, has been delivered to Cameco at this point, and they show a vested interest to be able to move forward with the storage of the nuclear waste, and that's where we believe that they have come forward and financed the collaboration agreement with our community.
The next speaker is also a member of our committee, speaking to what this treatment by a corporation does to a community. This is Dale Smith of Pine House.
A company or a corporation to come in and say, we want to make a difference, and they pride itself in making a difference in our community. And I look at its fruits when it comes to environmental impact, safety, and the things that I hear from the workers for the last how many years. I got 2 brothers that worked there. I have 4 brothers that at one time worked at the mines. I hear stuff on a very personal scale, and this is what we hear, and yet to be able to process that information and say that they want to continue. What guarantee do we have that there's safety when things are happening in our community that are way beyond our capacity to understand and still have a community spirit?
The next speaker is an elder who has been attempting to express his opinion to the nuclear industry, and you can hear what he says about what happens. Okay, I'm sorry, it doesn't look like that one's going to work. The next one up is another attempt of the community. Could I have a tech person here, please?
If we teach our young people about protecting and preserving and respecting the land, any one of us elders that go with that are not respected no more, because we are stopping something they don't want us to do. Today I'm past 70 years old. I have lost that respect from these people. Not everybody, but from the people that are trying to keep us quiet about respecting the land, preserving the land, protecting it, and whatever. I have been spending all summer putting signs up on the road, putting signs up with the load of saying no to nuclear waste. No nuclear waste storage in Saskatchewan. This is my freedom of right. That's taken away from me because every time I put a sign, somebody from that area will go up over there and pull it down. I went through 5 signs already. I'm going on number 6 now.
The next member of our committee speaks to what is happening with our youth in our communities.
50%, I remind you again.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a public meeting where the petition against nuclear waste is being presented to the administration.
You'll acknowledge your evil. They signed something. They said, wait a minute, hold it. We got, scientific evidence that we found. Let's listen to them first. Look at this agenda. You stacked it. You stacked an agenda so that you are hoping that nobody would ask about it. That no one would think to ask about nuclear waste.
If you're not aware, over 50% of the people in Pine House signed a petition against the nuclear waste, but it's proceeding. The gun is greased, so to speak, with the collaboration agreement because no one dares speak out against it now because of the jobs with the collaboration agreement. The next is speaking to the impact on the youth. If we're speaking about jobs, this member of our committee speaks to that.
What I would like to see the CNSC do is to protect the rights of our youth, because at the present time they're being bombarded by all the propaganda of the uranium industry. Cameco is in our schools, they're in our universities, our hospitals, our airports, sport and recreation facilities. They're everywhere. They come into our schools and do aptitude tests for jobs in the mine, and they make promises about good paying jobs and benefits. And while that might be true, the students aren't given all the facts about the radiation that they're going to be exposed to. You know, I've been working for almost 30 years. I have my degree in education and diploma in management, and some of these youth leave without even a grade 12, become laborers at the mine, and they come back with higher paying jobs than I've ever had. And why is that? Is it because they jump a plane and they go to the mine and work for a couple weeks? No, it's because they're facing risks, and those risks are health risks. But most of them don't even realize it. Most of them aren't even taught about those risks. The gestation period of ingested radiation can be up to 20 years. And these youth, they go to the mines, they'll only be in their mid-40s, and with the possibility of getting cancer. So is that fair?
The next member of our committee to be on this video is a First Nations whose his priority is the water. There was talk earlier that the water is cleaned up before it's re-entered into the environment. Our question is, where did the contaminants go then? The contaminants will be with us forever. Just because you bury them under waste rock, the time will come when those are no longer monitored, and we will be living with that. Our grandchildren will be living with this contaminant. So regardless of how clean your water may be once you treat it, those contaminants are with us in our environment forever. So our next member of our committee speaks briefly to the importance of water in the First Nations culture.
Water is sacred. Water is the element of life, and it sustains us. It keeps us alive. I've learned these teachings from our elders, and our elders, they say, that it takes quite an amount of water to process this uranium, and that it sits in our tailings ponds and it leaks into our aquifers, our environment. So for the sake of our animals, our fish, our future generations, please save our water.
So my closing comment, just before I play you the last couple of members of our committee making statements. You can talk jobs, you can talk safety for 7 days straight. What's missing here, if you miss this, the CNSC, you're about safety. If you respect the Aboriginal traditional knowledge, the ATK, safety is holistic. Safety isn't just physical. It's spiritual, it's mental, it's emotional, it's social. If you could see the impact happening in our communities just because people are not being given a voice. If you miss this spirit of this, the way this happened, could happen to any community. Is that what we want? Is that the legacy we want to leave? So our last two members of our committee will speak to that.
There was a woman who was a seer amongst our people. Her name was Gaichi, or Heart of the Barry branch. She told some prophecies which warned us. This warning is also for all of the businesses that want to make a living, that want to make technological gains at the expense of the nature. Because with the elements that they call uranium and that our elders call the black stone, will have some powers that no one can control. And those powers, once released, will bring a lot of sickness, a lot of death, a lot of destruction. And it has already impacted on us as people. Because our people they know and understand the science of the natural world much more intimately than Western knowledge.
Okay. With that process in mind, it has removed the people's rights and freedoms to ask questions, speak out on the collaboration agreement. Is when industry leaves this area, they will leave a burden for all generations to deal with health issues, environment issues, and the cost of cleanup.
The dynamics of the community has changed, Pinehouse, that there is a scramble and there is a silence on talk of future that I've never known before like this. And this is from my own people, my own community. And it breaks that companies can come in and do this without adequate consultation at all levels. We are left out of the whole process. Just a bunch of information we're given. But what do we do with it when no one is listening?
The Committee for Future Generations is opposed to the relicensing and expansion of the 3 Cameco uranium mines due to the fact that the people were not consulted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Who wants to start? A lot of questioning here. Dr. Barrio.
Thank you for your presentation. The people who signed the collaborative agreement, are they your elected chiefs, or is it just a committee of the Pine House, for example?
Can you speak to that, Dale?
Are they your elected people?
They are elected. I'd like to go more into it, but it's difficult to speak on matters that are personal, coming from the community, because the leadership, like the mayor, is my brother-in-law. So it's tough I ran against him on the last election. So dealing with the information we're receiving and trying to present it here today and keep my emotions intact. I look at the leaderships in all communities, and just like what Sierra Club just presented, and I just asked him a question, has any of the leaders anywhere asked you anything about what you're presenting? And for him to say no, at least curiosity will. If somebody threatens my child, I have instincts as a father to protect my child. And even information like that now, to react to it while this stuff is happening. Grassroots, these are berries that I picked with my family. Last summer I picked blueberries within sight of the mine site of Key Lake. And I've been feeding this to my children. So, hearing information about contamination and trying to understand millisieverts and tailings, I have to educate myself as a parent. We're all trying to do that in our communities. So we want information that is relevant, that is real. Because this is real. This fish, it's real now. It impacts me now, my body, my children. And I look at my leadership not on how legitimate they were put there, but do they understand the information? Is it getting to us? I'm a fisherman and wild rice grower. I chose not to go to the mines as my employment, as hard as it is to make a living being a fisherman. My wife is the license holder, but I fish.
I work in the packing plant in Pine House. So I see the effects. And we hear stuff from workers because they're young, they want to know, they want information when they go there. Yes, nobody wants to really talk about the fear they have of exposure. So we want to understand it. We don't often get the right information, that's true. And this is the language of industry and safety. And I just want to eat and feed my children and know that it's safe now. My mom died of cancer 20-some years ago. My dad's fighting it now. I don't want it. I don't want it for my children. I'm here today to say, is this safe now? Can you convince me? We want a relationship with industry based not just on money or economy or to be self-sufficient, but what we have now here in Saskatchewan, this land that we have, is so beautiful. I fell in love with it.
Okay.
I just want to finish by saying,
I just want to answer some of the questions you're posing here as you go along here.
Thank you.
We have a regulator, and we're going to hear from the Ministry of Environment. They're not industry, they're regulators. So if they tell you it's safe, will you believe it or not? We've heard, we're going to hear in 2 hours from the Ministry of Environment. I'm just trying to figure out who do you trust to give you information that you will believe in. And one other thing, I'd like you, we do not want to get into a debate, the political debate in your communities between your leaders and you. This is really not our mandate. What we are interested really is in the facts that you are asking. Is it safe to eat the berries? Is it safe to eat? That's what we really would like to talk about.
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Brian Lee. I'm the local president of the Fish Lake Métis and a member of the Committee for Future Generations. I'm also actively involved with a group in Prince Albert called RPIC, Renewable Power Intelligent Choice. I could like to offer just an opinion or an expression on your question that you've just posed to Dale. And asking him if he would trust the reports of the CNSC staff or the reports of the Ministry of Environment. I would suggest that we'd be way ahead of achieving that trust if, in fact, we had scientific, independent research accomplished on this whole issue of pollution of the uranium fuel chain.
Okay, that's something that we can actually maybe address. Where do we get the specific data and who measures it? Are they done through a third party and verified? Staff? Gate.
Ecometrics produced the Status of the Environment report in 2010 for Key Lake. And they compared the data on the high volume samplers, which have a filter in them that collect for 24 hours air circling the mine site, or the mill site and mine site, the old mine site. And so that is a information that would allow us to determine how much radionuclides are being deposited from the site into the natural environment. And basically, I'm just going to read what's in the report here. It says the Key Lake Status of Environment report, done every 5 years, was prepared by Ecometrics. That's 2010, EDOCS number 3659506, and still shows that the original 1979 environmental assessment predictions of minor or trivial effects from air emissions remain valid for the high volume sampler data collected at 5 locations. And that's basically, if you went around the windrows for the site, northeast, west, south, that's where those would be located, and one near the mill. The conclusion is based upon comparisons between the normal background airborne concentrations for the long-lived uranium series and the decay products of radon. And the comparison was to the 1988 United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation report on sources, effects, and risks of ionizing radiation. And the 2011 data also show on the high vols that, for example, lead-210, which is the end of the chain for radon that gets deposited onto the plants and the berries out in the in nature, I guess, that the levels are at background or below. So we have this data. It's in the reports, the status of environment reports. So the terrestrial environment we know is protected, and then every animal in the food chain, including man, is protected at those levels because they are at background. And we also know from the effluents that are treated, the treated effluent that is released to the environment, the levels are very, very low for the radionuclides. So the aquatic environment is being protected downstream of these mines. So there's an example of the United Nations Committee and the comparisons that are done by an independent third party, Ecometrics, 2010.
Sarah Eden for the record. The other thing I would like to add is that we also have the Eastern Athabasca Regional Monitoring Program, which collects country foods and analyzes country foods. We will hear from Dr. McCollum today. He'll be able to talk to that. And also, we've also discussed over the last 2 days the Athabasca Working Group, which also collects community samples of country foods, and those are analyzed. And those reports are available online, or you can contact our office at any time, and we can help you interpret those reports.
So I think what we just heard is, all of this is to say there was studies, independent studies, and concluded it was safe. Back to you.
May I ask a question? How many tons of tailings collectively are there in northern Saskatchewan at this moment?
Okay, you ask another question, and we'll get to that
because
in a minute.
If we're talking about safety, these are results for today. The tailings will be with us forever. What guarantee? Dale held up this fish and said, what guarantee? We're also talking about our future generations' fish. What guarantee can the Cameco give us that 200, 300 years from now, after the monitors are gone, we have buried hundreds of thousands of tons of tailings, radioactive, that are now totally accessible by groundwater, potentially. The only constant is change. What guarantee do we have that the tailings that Cameco mines are leaving with us will never get into our groundwater?
Okay, so I would rather ask, I don't know if Cameco can give you the guarantee, but the regulator better give you the guarantee. So, what is the answer to that question?
Jean Leclerc for the record. So all tailings management facilities, there's detailed modeling that are done for performance for those tailings facilities in the long term. I think it's important to remind people that the material, those tailings are actually the radioactive materials that were already present. So they're not created, understood that they're in a different form, so it's important they be managed in the long term. That's why there's very extensive engineering that's done to design the facilities to contain the tailings. And there's a lot of research and work that's done to study the performance of those tailings. So those are part of the environmental assessments that have been done in the past, and a lot of modeling work that's done to ensure that the environment continues to be protected.
Okay, question? Dr. Bayo, I thought I stopped you last.
No, I'm fine. I had my answer. Thank you.
Dr. McDill?
Thank you. Again, I'd like to start by saying this is an entirely magnificent and beautiful part of the world. This is my second time here. Whenever we hear the community is split or disrupted or struggling, divided, thank you, we hear it. Yeah, we understand it. Many of us have families that are divided or struggling, so we understand at a person. I'm sorry, maybe the people at the back can't hear. We understand at a level of the heart what you're saying. I think I'd like to ask staff to try and the fish and the berries, I think we'll hear something more about in a little while. To talk about the tailings a little more, the water, the clean water. We had a question about the tailings and where does it go. I think we can try and answer that a little better for the community. It's difficult for us to know how to address your feeling about not being consulted. That's really a challenge because this is a community decision. Isn't it? You say it's not. So maybe then I can I'll ask you to reply to that. But maybe I can ask staff one more time to try and talk about the tailings and some of the other concerns this group has brought forward today. So Sierra Club talk. Let's go back to the one example I mentioned earlier, where we came out with 226. And I'll go back to the intervener. Okay.
Tom Gates for the record. And I'll use Key Lake as an example. There's two different types of tailings areas at Key Lake. The first area where the tailings were deposited was in an above-ground tailings management facility. And the way that is constructed is they take till or earth and they add bentonite clay to it, and they line the bottom on the surface of the land with that, and basically that stops any water going through. As soon as it gets wet, it stops. And they do the same thing after that's down. They put a berm around it, a very tall berm, with bentonite added to it also, which is a clay. It's used to seal things. And then on top of that is a layer of sand with pipes in it. And this is very general, the way I'm talking about it. And those pipes collect any liquids that come out of the tailings as they're deposited into this squared, bermed area. And that water, the contaminated water, reports, it's called pour water, reports to a sump, and the sump pumps it to the mill for treatment before it's released under highly strict regulatory limits out into the environment. And so the concept there is this fills up with tailings. As the tailings get old in there, they lose the water in between the particles, and that's drained off through this bottom drain system. And any other precipitation or rain that goes on top of it, the same sort of thing. And then at the end of when this is filled up, they go into a decommissioning reclamation situation where they'll put a layer of sand on top, another layer that stops liquids from going through into the into the tailings, so that there's no water to carry away any of the contaminants. And then on top of that, of course, is earth so that trees and plants can be grown. And the concept is to create gullies and armor those gullies with rocks, so that those gullies stay like streams would stay in a dried out stream. So it directs water off the top of it out into the natural environment, and that water won't be contaminated because it's drained off the top. And they're looking at landscape designs and objectives for that, so that it looks like the natural habitat. So that's how that system works. The other question, of course, is radon gas, which comes out of the tailings and into the air, and floats across into the natural environment, and the levels of that when it decays and is deposited on the berries. And we talked about the levels of radon earlier, and they are at background very close to the mine site, if not at the limits of the lease. So that's how the radionuclides are contained in that facility, and the radon gas with the cover doesn't come out of this system very well at all. It will attenuate or decrease the amount of radon gas coming out. So the environment's protected from the above ground tailings management facility through its life cycle up to decommissioning. After decommissioning and reclamation, the province, if the CNSC releases the tailings area to the province, and is assured that it's in a stable state, the province has what is called a fund for monitoring and maintenance of the facility for a long time. And I won't go into the requirements for that fund because I'm not an expert in it. There's also another fund called a maximum failure fund, and that has to be a financial assurance that's put to the side for future generations. So those funds are also going to be established for the in-pit tailings management facilities after decommissioning and reclamation. With the in-pit tailings, if you can imagine a mined out area where they've taken uranium ore out of the bottom of the pit, what they do is they fill the pit with tailings. But before they fill the pit with tailings, they put in what is called an underdrain, which is a pipe, and on top of the pipe is filtered rocks, etc., to stop the tailings from going into the pipe. But the pipe pulls the water from the bottom of the tailings so that the pore water's out of it at the end of the life of the facility. And that water, of course, is pulled off and goes to the mill for treatment. Now, coming towards the end of the life cycle of the pit, the in-pit tailings management facility, what happens is the pressure of the tailings on itself pushes all of the pore water out, and then on top of that they put a 2-meter layer of sand, and they also have a water cover. And as they put the sand on top of the tailings through the water, it grabs the radionuclides out of the water, and in the first year most of the contaminants are gone, and it takes up to about 13 years for the radium that's in that water to get to Saskatchewan surface water quality objectives for the protection of aquatic life. At that point, the tailings management facility has a water cover on it. It's just like a lake, and during this whole process, any groundwater that is around, and this is also during the operation, any groundwater around this pit is drawn down through a ring of groundwater wells, and it's pumped and treated through a reverse osmosis system that is dumped into Horsefly Lake, and it's ultra pure water. So that pumping system remains for another 15 years after the water is cleared up on the surface of the tailings management facility, and at the end of that time, it's hoped that they can turn off that pumping system and release the tailings management facility to the government of Saskatchewan. And that's my tailings story.
Okay.
I have one more before I go back. The intervener said that she doesn't believe that there are any deep geological repositories. I wonder if I can ask staff to tell me at this stage, where is Finland on their DGR for fuel?
It's Ronge for the record. Just to answer the question, multiple DGRs exist in the world. I'll name Sweden is one of the countries, Finland is one, and Germany has one. And then the DGR process with respect to Finland, with respect to high-level fuel, I'm going by memory now, so I don't have the exact accuracy, but they start to put, from design perspective, is complete, and then they are working towards the storage of the fuel in the DGR.
The intervener's question was on fuel, not on your comment on DGR was on long-term fuel, storage of spent fuel.
See, what you need to understand here, I started out with the elephant in the room. If people had had a chance to be involved in these agreements, these questions could have been asked before the administration signed. Now that the agreements are signed, we're getting whipped by both ends of the nuclear fuel chain now because of the jobs and that are getting promised. It's not just the tailings to worry about. Now it's the threat of nuclear waste coming.
Can we get something clear? The license renewal has nothing to do with a cooperative agreement. This mine has been operating, those 3 mines have been operating for years. They just came to the end of a license, that existing license. All of the cooperative agreement is Cameco negotiating with those communities. It has nothing to do with whether the operation of the mine is safe, which is the purpose of this hearing. And it's continuing the discussion of an existing operation that's been going on for years. So I don't try to minimize the difficulties you have in your communities to come to a consensus. All I'm trying to share with you is that we are looking for the safety dimension of whether we can feel comfortable in allow Cameco to operate the way they've been operating for the next 10 years.
The way they've been operating?
Right.
Did you see the video of the signing of the English River? Those agreements obliged the people in those communities now to support any existing and future projects.
Just for the record, Sean Willey, I want to make it clear on the record that these collaboration agreements build off of 25 years of working with these local communities. They codify, formalize, and better an engagement process. They're no way tied to the nuclear waste management process. The Pinehouse Métis agreement is publicly available. There's not a mention of the nuclear NWMO process within that agreement or with any agreement Cameco has ever done.
Okay, we got to move to another line of questioning. Ms. Velshi.
Actually, it's maybe still the same line of questioning. Do the collaboration agreements require the communities to support the licensing process for the uranium mines and not express any concerns with the operations of the mines?
Sean Willey for the record. The communities agree within the collaboration agreements to continue to support Cameco and Areva's existing projects and activities that take place in the applicable traditional territories. So long as Cameco and Areva continue to meet our consultation, our regulatory and legal obligations. So for instance, we continue to engage the Environmental Quality Committee. We continue to engage on project-specific engagements through EAs. We continue to do our annual northern tours. We continue to engage with our community liaisons. The communities, of course, retain all the rights through their leaders and members to raise concerns of any kind. To the companies, through dispute resolution process now aligned within these collaboration agreements, to the regulators or to governments, and to seek to have those concerns meaningfully addressed.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay. Could I say something or ask a question? Sure. One of the things that I'm wondering about is I've never been involved in a process like this, so I have a lot to learn. And as such, I watched some of the live stream yesterday, and today I've been here present. So one of the concerns from some of the intervenors is such that this relicensing application go forward to enable them employment. And then, of course, on Cameco's side, for this to go forward, it's for them to make money, to make profits. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. There'd be no interest for them. They're a corporation. So I guess there's a bit of two questions, maybe one for you, the Commission, and one for Cameco. For you, the Commission, has your decision of the CNSC already been made? Is it already a foregone conclusion that you're going to extend the relicensing for 10 years? And then for Cameco, the question is, in the event that you were not allowed a relicensing, you did not achieve that, how would that affect your corporation? Your corporation's bottom line, if you will.
So you want to take it first, or you want us to go first? I'll answer first. The way the process works, Cameco, the applicant, is coming and asking for a license renewal because the license expires sometimes in October. Our staff analyze their request, reach their own conclusion, and makes recommendations. Our hearing here is to listen to all sides, including you, and then make a determination as to A, whether the license will be approved, and if so, whether there's any condition attached to that particular license. And in the decision, you'll hear all the rationale for the decision, including your inputs.
It's Liam Mooney for the record. Again, we are here in front of you today seeking the application on the basis that we put forward based on our strong safety, health, environment, performance, and our commitment to continuing it over the next 10-year period. As a corporation, we are publicly traded and disclose our various risks as part of our annual information form, our management discussion and analysis, and other required filings. And those risks are clearly laid out there for the corporation.
Thank you. Question? Dr. McKeown.
So one of the themes that we've heard over these last 2 days is, if I can use the word, the translation of information from very high-level scientific or engineering to a format that can be understood well by the communities. And as I've listened, it's clear that some of the issues, I think, relate to that gap in translation. If you had your wish, how would you see the information that you've heard today and you heard on the web stream yesterday be presented in a way that would be better able to be understood by your communities?
I would appreciate giving the information or having access to it, being presented to myself as a local Métis leader, and kind of maybe summarized in layman's terms, if you will. I agree with the earlier intervener that his reconcile or his understanding of all of the discussions put forward by experts and so on and their results, all of that, it is difficult to understand for a layperson such as myself. And so I would really appreciate findings, scientific discovery that is factual of the existing conditions of the uranium mine tailings. One of the things, and the reason I say that and I express that independent, 2 days ago I attended a film put forward by the nuclear industry in Saskatoon, and one of the things that they reported in the film was they discussed the incident at Chernobyl. And apparently the World Health Organization reported there were only 56 deaths at Chernobyl as a result of that meltdown, but in fact there are about 96,000 deaths as a direct result of Chernobyl. So it's quite a difference there in terms of human impact. And I guess it depends on who you're going to listen to. If you're going to listen to the industry, their interests will be put forward, certainly. They're not going to jeopardize their intent or their going forward with their corporate agenda.
Let me just say, I agree with you, it's very complicated. If it was really a simple kind of a matter, you wouldn't need a regulator. I can assure you of that. The problem is, and it's back to my question, whose data and opinion you trust. Our mandate is to look at scientific evidence. And the Chernobyl argument, I have to tell you, is classic. There's huge debate and fights amongst various communities, and if you go on the internet, you can see the number of people who died ranging from 56 to 1 million. So the question is, who do you trust? The World Health Organization seems to me like a pretty independent kind of United Nations body. You quoted the UN. That's their argument, and you have to make up your own mind. All I would say, if you're interested in nuclear, we have a pretty good website, the CNSC website, and invite you to not only read it, but when you figure it's too complicated, send us an email, so we'll try to simplify it. Still, anybody else who would like to? You have the final words.
Just on our consultation plans, and we've heard this loud and clear through this relicensing, Sean Woolley for the record. Over the 25 years, we've designed our consultation engagement programs with this very thought in mind about this high-level technical information and the approach of communicating to communities. And we utilize community members, elders, our liaison officers, and obtain their knowledge and then in Cree languages to describe the technical nature of this and bring them involved in technical workshops. And we've honed this process over 25 years to now work where we feel that the capacity and the knowledge within communities when we're doing consultation has increased dramatically, and will continue to increase the more we work and communicate with these communities.
Okay, thank you. You have the final say.
It is our desire to trust you, to trust CNSC. It is our desire to trust Cameco. When we as a community desire a future, we want to envision a future that we can live now. That the values that I am learning and practicing, whether it's a traditional lifestyle or a mining job, I understand the challenges. We understand. We know basically everybody understands the desire for life, for better quality of life. When we as a community, $200 million sounds like a lot of money. And if corporations have the freedom to collaborate and put a confidentiality clause to the leadership,
preventing them from discussing details to the community, such as Pine House. We had meetings because we wanted to know. There was public meetings, but very vague answers. There was words that came out like milking the cow. That this industry has been around, and now's our time to milk it. I, as a fisherman, when I don't see any documentation inviting us to this process, and I attend the trappers' meetings, and there's no paperwork, no invitation. If I had a letter to present, I would. None from the fishermen, none from the trappers, none from the wild rice growers. So 3 years this took, from Cameco officials to ours, the leadership. And they finally present us with a document, a summary agreement, 1 month before the signing. And here we were, we had 15, 20 minutes. This was one of the wording. Pine House promises to make reasonable efforts to ensure Pine House members do not say or do anything that interferes with or delays Cameco or Riva's mining, or do or say anything that is not consistent with Pine House's promises under the collaboration agreement. That's what we received on a community level. And without going into all the details of how that meeting went, we desire to trust our own leadership, the companies that come here, to secure a future, to create economic stability for the region, not just for us now, but countless generations, and yet ensure safety and quality of life. We desire a right spirit from these companies, a spirit that is already real in our communities. And when we see words like this come to us, yes, we do get emotional, because when I read that, I looked at my dad and says he has to make reasonable efforts to ensure I shut up and not oppose. We police ourselves. Who has authority to even write that? And that this was a 3-year process, that this document changed hands 12 times according to our mayor, what he told us in a public meeting. And we're having to, I'm in a lawsuit because I'm suing my own community, my own Métis local. I've never known this language of how to collaborate and speak out, such as places like that. I never dreamed I would be here. And I don't desire it on anyone what I have to go through when I go back to my town. Yes, I'm at a loss at times, but we adapt as Native people. We have to adapt. So we expect fairness from this hearing, and we thank you for the opportunity. I wish things could change, and you're the ones to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you.